Hi there, everybody. My name is Christian, and today I'm doing a film analysis of the film When I Walk, which was directed by Jason De Silva, a filmmaker with multiple sclerosis. The published date on YouTube was 2013, and the release date onto YouTube Movies was 2014. And the central theme and ideas of the movie are that Jason one day is out with his family and they're they're at the beach for a fun summer day trip. And apparently they decide to go to a beach right next to an airport so that this way they can watch the planes go by in the sky while they're just running around playfully and having fun. But then Jason falls on the sand, which is okay, but instead of getting up fairly quickly, he struggles. And, this was initially like I have here. He and his family initially dismissed this as a momentary lack of coordination, but what he discovers is that this is a sign of him having multiple sclerosis. And just anecdotally speaking, what I've noticed in my own observations in life, although I do have very limited life experience, I will say, as a young person. And I'm certainly not an expert in diagnosing disability either. But whoops. But what I've noticed is that when people say, oh, that's just how he is, or oh, that was just a mistake, or uh, that's just his personality, or oh, he's probably just out of shape. That what those comments are hinting at is a disability of some sort, because most people would not choose to have trouble in life. And so I think that while many people have good intentions and they want to be kind, um, we have to be careful to not dismiss problems, right? In that if someone takes a while to get up from falling on to what's relatively a soft surface, like sand doesn't hurt you. And so if someone's struggling to get up, it, it it's an indicator of a physical or other health condition. So Jason goes to the doctor and he initially goes to a doctor that specializes in walking. So, but that doctor wasn't able to figure out what was going on. And later on in the film, he goes to another doctor that says, I can cure multiple sclerosis because we just discovered, scientifically speaking, that it's a vascular condition. And so um, it's not a neurological condition like we once thought. But even with that treatment, he only feels a reduction in his headaches and he feels better in regards to another symptom, but his MS is not completely cured. So even though he's facing a lot of medical trauma as well as the whole experience of having a disability, uh, in that it really rocks your world. And so what's interesting about Jason, though, is he went from being non-disabled to disabled. So a lot of us don't have that experience of being completely able-bodied and then suddenly or gradually losing abilities. Um, I never had that experience, so I don't know what it's like to be completely non-disabled. But for him, he did, and this was particularly quite shocking and striking for him. So, like I have here, despite his challenges, Jason does want to meet developmental milestones like others at his age, including dating, marriage, and family. And so eventually he goes to a multiple sclerosis support group. He meets a young lady and has a child with her and gets married. Um, They get married first, and then they have the child. Um, what's interesting is I was unsure of why, I'm still unsure of why he chose this young woman, but I'll get more into that later. One of the reasons is because she is, as his caregiver, basically, um, she's able-bodied and she doesn't want to care for him um, much longer. And which I don't want to give too much away. There was a sequel to this documentary, and I know what happens. But anyway, in this film, she's feeling burnt out after after initially feeling wonderful with dating him and marrying him. And so she goes hiking to get away from Jason later on. But um, overall, I think what the film shows is that what I call here interdependent living is possible even with multiple sclerosis. But more so, it shows that disability can both make life more complicated in some regards, but it also does not absolve someone of life's messiness. Um, it it can create messiness in that some things are harder, like I just said, but sometimes people are people, and I think that we're all imperfect. And but anyway, what I like about the film is that it shows from Jason's perspective how you can live an empowered life even with disability, which his disability is progressive. So it means that he's getting worse over time. My disability, as far as I know, is not progressive. So that was that was interesting for me to watch how his disability was getting worse. Um, but like I said, it shows that he can live independently with the support of other people, and that having support people does not diminish your independence. It enhances it. So the film summary with the who, what, when, how, and why questions are that who's in this film? It's Jason, who's the film director, his mother, and his wife Alice. Those are the three main people that are in the film. Along with, I should have put here other doctors and other supporting characters, but it's mostly him, his mother, and his wife Alice. And the film describes Jason's life as a person with MS, which includes everything from when he fell down on the beach in the year 2006, how he saw treatments for multiple sclerosis, and attending a multiple sclerosis support group, spending time with his mother, and like hearing the things that she would say to him. And he created the film to show that he's not going to let multiple sclerosis get in the way of his dream, which is to be a documentary filmmaker. And so the point of view is that the director um, is describing his life as someone with MS, but he weaves in the voices of his mom, his wife, his doctors, and others as part of the film. And what I thought was interesting was that they all had different perspectives. His mom's perspective to me was more of like, well, there's not much I can say other than you got to just get through this because that's how life goes. His wife was like, I love you, but there's limits to how much I'm willing to do to support you and be part of your life, which I thought was sad for him. His doctors who said, well, we would love to help you, but there's no cure for MS, and we are advancing scientifically, but that's about it. And others who were just in the background. To me, the style felt authentic, but not as well produced or cinematic as a Hollywood film. But that's okay because I like just seeing how people's lives go. I like how Jason took me through. each part of his life in a chronological fashion from childhood on up, which gave a lot of context here. So I wanted to combine the film summary and the analysis together because I feel like as I talk in this video, I'll be analyzing the film and the three questions that are supposed to be answered. Um, as I was watching the film, I took a lot of notes, and so these are basically just my notes here. So first we have the beach incident, which makes him realize that he has multiple sclerosis. Then the doctor, who was an expert in walking, did not know what was wrong. But there was a part of the film where Jason is trying to reckon with the fact that he's now disabled and never was before. And it's part of a conversation where he's saying to his mom, you know what I really need is a mindset shift. And that's a direct quote, a mindset shift. In that he says that he's always thinking about being sick, but he really wants to think about things in a more positive and uplifting way. His mom encourages him to think of people in poverty when he's thinking about how his disability affects him, which to me, maybe that was from her perspective, maybe that was helpful, but um I thought that it was not helpful. I thought that it was kind of dismissive of how he felt. But I also know that she, as a non-disabled person, may not fully understand. And like, especially as someone who does not have the fear and worry of their body deteriorating over time. I, don't- I think that his mother just may not have known what to have said there. But also, um, it's probably also that she f feels pain caused by MS. And so maybe she hasn't reckoned with her own emotions on that yet. And so by her own admission, she's trying to stay positive all the time. She tries to stay positive all the time, but some people would call that toxic positivity when we're not able to acknowledge pain in a productive way. But I think maybe that was her attempt at trying to cover up his pain or trying to, get rid of it. At one point, when he's at the doctor's office, the doctor that specializes in walking or physiology, and the doctor says, "Here, um, watch this video of you walking with all of the electrodes on your head and body, and let's see if you've made any progress with your treatment." So Jason watches himself walk, and he feels disappointed. And um, I have here check quote in film because I wasn't sure if these were um, direct quotes, but he says that he's getting worse so fast he feels like his time is running out with MS. He describes the hard choice between the crazy things he's wanted to do, like finding love or romance, versus just focusing on his career, which is being a documentary filmmaker. And I think that that is quite interesting because, most people don't have to choose between the two. Most people can do both. They can find people that they love to spend time with, but they can also pursue a successful career. And so I think that that is interesting that his life has a time limit on it. And it's not just interesting, it's sad. Like here, I'm sitting here watching the film, as someone that does not have multiple sclerosis or any family members with it, I do know a couple people with it, but I haven't really been in their circles. So I have not been personally impacted by MS. So it's easy for me to say that that's interesting to me, quote unquote. But really, it's just deeply unfortunate, um, because this is his life being cut short and being limited. But at the same time, I think he does a great job of working around it and, you know, enhancing his life because of all that he's learning from having MS. So, but nevertheless, MS causes him some vision challenges. Um, and so, in the midst of all of this occurring, Jason wanted to find out if MS was hereditary in his family. And so he traveled to India to talk to his dad about it. And he said that he didn't know for sure though, but he thought he knew of a past family member with MS. So at least knowing that probably was comforting to Jason in that this wasn't something that's only happening to him and it's a random occurrence, but rather that there might be some cause that he can hold on to for hope, or for understanding. So during the film, Jason discusses independent living, but even in the midst of living such an empowering life, Jason asks, "What will I do without support?" And he was asking this in the context of, "Well, what will I do without, having you around, Mom? What will happen?" And she says that we are all alone in this world, even with support. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of a downer comment. Like we're all alone in this world, even with support. Oh man. Wouldn't a better comment have been like, "Oh honey, I'm so sorry that you're having to feel this way." Um, to be honest with you, I don't know what you'll do. But if you start planning now, you can have friends that, or maybe if you create a family, that's who could take care of you. But anyway, maybe she didn't want to give him false hope, but nevertheless, her comments throughout the film kind of make me sad. Anyway, Jason, I think, says here, I think it's really hard to be involved with such a hard disability in reference to Alice. I think he was feeling um, bad that his disability is changing their relationship and the way that they are getting to know each other. But I'd have to rewatch the film to see what that quote was in context to. Um, so later on, Jason went to France to try to get healed by Catholic religious leaders, and he mentions that before he went to a church in France, that he had a dream, and that that he was running in this dream. But when he wasn't healed, that was quite significant. Um, and this whole experience, I think, caused him to feel sad for sure. Um, I I wonder whether he was crying because the dream didn't come true or from the healing. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up as well in the film. Later on in the movie, he talks about whether he can get on public transit easily. Like as he was going around the city, he says the subways are treacherous. But despite the noisy pedestrians above ground from the sub above the subway, he says, I love it. And I really resonated with that because people around me wonder as well why I love the city so much as opposed to the nice, quiet, beautiful country suburbs. And I don't know, there's just something about it. And I went downtown with a friend once and he said, "Man, the city feels so feels so motivating," he said. And I think that's a good way to describe it in that I was downtown with my aunt once and she said, "Wow, Christian, you come alive when you're in this city." Because I was walking faster than her and my brother were, and usually I'm the slowest walker in the group. Just not because I can't walk fast, but because I just choose to walk more slowly. And so I think that um, I think that that's I find that interesting that there's a commonality between Jason and I, um, and my friend. All of us have some kind of disability, but yet we love the city. And also, I have another friend, and we spent like many minutes talking about how much we love public transit and the city, how much we love feeling like we are a part of things, and how the suburbs is very isolating and it keeps us away from community that is often more accessible by driving. And like even if you do drive, driving, I was talking with another friend with a disability about how driving is a symbol of class. And so as we're talking about identity and justice, I think this is relevant in that um, somebody said to me earlier this year, um, "Oh, Christian, you don't want to ride on the SEPTA bus. That bus is full of unfortunate people." And I was talking to my friend about this conversation. Like, I can't believe this person said that to me, that riding the bus was was something that an unfortunate person, quote unquote, would do. And I was saying like, okay, to be fair, I think that they were referring to probably unhoused or homeless people or other people that may not be, regardless of their housing situation, they may be more rugged as far as being on the streets, and so they may not be trustworthy. But I felt as someone who has relied on public transit very much to get around town and the city, um, I took that personally. Um, Even though this person was not referring to me, I felt like, gee, you know what? And as I said to my friend, I was like, I'm proud of riding public transit. If it means I get to be surrounded by working people um, who are just doing their thing. I was riding the bus to a job interview, and there were probably other people that were trying to get to and from their work um, as well. After the job interview, I saw this lady sitting on the bench, and she was talking to me about how she goes grocery shopping. Um, So I like she goes in grocery stores, like w w walks to grocery markets or to the Dollar Tree or whatever, and she buys enough food to hold in her hands. And like I don't think she needed help because I asked her like, "Do you need me to buy you some food?" And she was confused by that question because I think what she was referring to was not that she needed help, but just that that was her daily life. But nevertheless, I feel like there's such a connection and commonality between having a disability, loving public transit, and but there's a tension there because on one hand we love public transit because we don't have to rely on on other people to drive us, and we understand that public transit is less convenient than driving. right? Because a non-disabled person would be like, just drive. Like, why do you want to use public transit unless you A, have to, or B, are just going down to the city for a day and you don't feel like parking, right? Those are the only two reasons I know of that a non-disabled person would use public transit. They don't always understand that it's because A, we don't want to be an inconvenience to others, and B, it's the fun, empowering feeling of actually being in control of your life and being able to go somewhere. So I think when he said, I love it here, that what he was saying beneath the surface was like, I'm not being protected by other non-disabled people from the environment. So I thought that was cool. So that's the intersection with class, socioeconomic status, and disability. Next, we're going to get into another form of identity or just another form of classification, which is romance and dating. So, which I think intersects with gender and sexuality as well as disability. And at this time in the film, his walking is getting worse. But him and Alice discuss sexuality together. And one question that was quite memorable and poignant was he asks Alice, what happens when his disability gets worse? And and his question was also like, would you prefer to have a non-disabled partner to do these activities with? And she said yes, that she would, because it was not her childhood dream to be married to a disabled person, or at least someone who's not able-bodied enough to do these adult activities in their traditional manner. And so I felt like I felt split in that moment when I watched that. In that one, I felt like I understood Alice in that she, as a non-disabled person, deserves to to feel that way, to want to be with her group of people and not just other disabled people who are different from her. Like I understood that. I think that's a valid point. But I also felt really bad for Jason, and I think I lean more towards feeling bad for Jason. Because to tell your partner that just point blank, like, yes, I would prefer to have a non-disabled partner. And especially for him as someone who was non-disabled before this. I wonder what he thought. Like, gee, I was non-disabled, now I'm not. And so that makes me less desirable. But then again, earlier in the film, Alice was saying that back when they were dating, she said that she felt like after Jason asked her whether she thought he was desirable in general, Alice said, I think that there are plenty of women that would want to do that with you. And so I find it interesting that all of these comments that are said by Alice, and I don't want to reveal what happens in the sequel to the film, but as I said in the beginning, when people give you these little bits of information communication wise, there's a saying that all behavior is communication that is used in the disability community, and that's something that I do agree with. The second part of that saying is not all behavior involves communicative intent, but I like the first part. All behavior is communication because every comment that's made by Alice is pointing to how, even though she married Jason, she didn't really think through, like, her conception on disability identity. And she didn't really consider whether it was just for her to, and by just I mean justice. Like she didn't think about whether it was right for her as someone that doesn't find a deep sense of belonging in the disability community, whether she should marry someone disabled, or at least she doesn't seem to me to be a strong ally to the disability community at the very least, right? Um, because it definitely is possible to be a strong and loving ally, but I wonder whether she is or not. But also, maybe this perspective is kind of harsh, right? And maybe I'm discounting that she is a good person. And the fact that she was at an MS support group and the fact that she married Jason and loved him um, is quite significant. And maybe she has MS, but just has a mild form of it. Although like that's what I thought in the beginning, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. Although I could be wrong. So, yes, she lacks the shared understanding as I have here on the slide, but also she's facing the social pressure of like, you know, what do I do? I'm non-disabled and yet my life doesn't meet non-disabled standards. Jason says, at least you have me for 15 years, but I don't know whether I'm not sure. I think she genuinely loves him and wanted him, but later on in the film, there's discussion about restaurant inaccessibility as well as with bathrooms and taxi cabs and stuff like that. So later on in the film, there's mention that Alice can jump, so maybe she does have MS. I don't know. Um, Jason, as a result of the vascular treatment I mentioned earlier, has fewer headaches, less numbness, but that's it. Got married to Alice. After the wedding, they both ride on his scooter, which is lovely. They discuss MS and fertility and sexuality, and um, they go to the fertility doctor. They discuss how they feel about adult activities, and Alice essentially delivers him a gut punch, but Jason takes it quite well. Um, Jason says, "I'm not going to live past 50, so we got to do everything before that." He also says that he's pissed off uh, in general. He says that the world is not really accommodating for someone with MS. He says, "I worked really hard until I was 25, and that's it." So there's a feeling of like, wow, I had 25 years of non-disabledness, and now I'm not non-disabled anymore. So Alice wants to go hiking. And so this is the picture on the bottom right here where she's saying to him, like, because shortly after she's sitting on the bed here, she gets up and um, I remember this was the moment where she's like, I gotta go hiking because for my own mental health and sanity, she said the word sanity there. I just gotta go hiking. And in the film, they show a photograph that she took while hiking. And Jason is very cool. He takes it with stride. He's like, no problem. I totally understand. And that's what I would say too. I don't want anyone who cares for me to feel like they can't do what they want to do in life because they're a human being too. And they deserve to live to the fullness of their non-disabled identity and go hiking, and that's fine. It's not something I would do or want to do because honestly, there's so many ticks and bugs and in the forest. Like, yikes. But anyway, Alice wants to go hiking, and so that's fine. Um, but as you can see in this photo here, Jason is like he's really deep in thought. Like, oh, I'm disabled, so that's the problem here. So he's feeling the tension, and so is she, right? So this is a moment of tension. Uh, you know, and Jason and his mom later on, they sit together to write out his support needs. Now, I wasn't sure why they were doing this. At first, I thought, is he applying for Social Security benefits? But then I think they said that he was getting an aid. So to get the aid, they have to tell the aide what to do and how to support him. Um, and there was also a discussion about, how Jason feels about when people find disability inspiring, or what Stella Young, the disability advocate, calls inspiration porn, in that, you know, Jason had mixed feelings on it, I think. Like it's not inspiring to, you know, just live your life, but so then again, it's not mixed feelings. He felt like it's not inspiring to do this, but also that people are watching the film and he's helping people that way. But it's not inspiring, quote unquote. Uh at one point I just thought this was interesting. His mom says almost jokingly that he has total neglect with teeth brushing because man, his life has been made so much more difficult, and that even just the simple act of brushing his teeth is a challenge. So, but his mom says it's total neglect, which is fair. It's fair. If he's not brushing his teeth enough times a day, that's a problem. I also thought it was cool when Jason said he liked the graffiti in the city because I do too. I think it's a sign of a happening and thriving city when um when somebody see does graffiti. It's like life in the city is imperfect. It's not as pristine as the country, but the fact that it's imperfect and the fact that graffiti is seen as a cultural vice, I think is I think is a good thing. It shows that you're at the center of the world. And like again, I just find it interesting how when you're disabled, like disabled people like the city. I just think that's an interesting thing. Be interesting if there was a study conducted on that, like um an an analysis of urban life and disability and its appeal, or the appeal of urban life when having a disability. Anyway, what's cool is that as someone who's living in the city, Jason is like, look, there are not many places that are accessible. Why don't we just create a map of all the places where disabled people have found? Because in the film, he's like, I don't know where to even go because nowhere is accessible. So he creates this app called Access Maps, which I've used in my disability and public health class here at William Patterson as part of an assignment, which is pretty cool. And so Jason gets his friends to go tell him which parts of the city are accessible and which ones are not. It's interesting because he has non-disabled friends do this work. It's not necessarily it's not people with disabilities doing it. He gets his non-disabled friends to go sit in a wheelchair and see how they feel with, being disabled, quote unquote, and going into these places. Like one place had like the width of a doorway to a restroom was too narrow. Another place was just difficult. Like rough payment. Jason's backpack fell at one point. Or no, that was his friend who was a young woman. Her backpack fell. Uh, just some things there that make life more difficult when things are not accessible. Then Jason and Alice become pregnant and they have a baby. And so they notice, the Zoom thing is covering up the wording here. Let me see if I can get rid of it. Um, no, I can't, but that's okay. So they notice that their baby has a heartbeat and they're getting baby toys and Jason's getting a baby carrier to carry the baby with. And so Jason is meeting that milestone of becoming a father, becoming a dad, which is awesome. But Jason can no longer at this point see to read anymore, which causes Alice a lot of pain emotionally. She's crying about it and everything. Um, Jason doesn't seem to be as affected by it, but I think men express emotion, you know, m maybe he's feeling it like internally at first. So Alice at later on in the film, she helps him with or tries to help him with video editing. This was towards the end of the film, but Jason's like, it's so much easier if I just do it. Earlier, Alice helped him push his scooter while she was in the city. Alice says, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm pregnant. Jason says, sorry, can't help. And Jason kind of smiles and laughs, and it was kind of a lighthearted moment, but it also indicates disability. Unfortunately, Alice has a miscarriage. So, um, Jason was not allowed or able to be in the hospital room where she was due to inaccessibility for his wheelchair, which sucks, right? Like imagine if you're a dad and your wife is having the worst night of her life, having a miscarriage, and you can't be there. Like that's awful. It's just truly awful when public places like hospitals don't meet accessibility standards as outlined in the Americans with Disabilities Act. That sucks. Um, but Jason and Alice then become pregnant with baby number two. While baby number two will never be able to erase the pain of a miscarriage, it does help them feel like they have more solace in that regard. And so basically, the bottom line of the film is to embrace disability and the people around you while doing it. I think that's the message that Jason would want us to take away from it, but also that disability causes a lot of pain and suffering. And so, even with our attempts to celebrate disability pride, it's nevertheless it's hard. I mean, Lydia X.C. Brown, I keep mentioning that article a lot now from this class where she says it's not wrong to desire a cure for disability. And you know what? I like that because I like how his film balances like the medical model and its goodness and the social model and how despite the inadequacies of the medical model and its oftentimes inability to help us that we can make the most of our situation. And so yeah, that is my film analysis. Um, One thing I will say too is that as far as the other identities that we've discussed in this class, whether it's race and ethnicity, immigration status, um, I've covered gender and sexuality and disability. Um, I've I've covered class and socioeconomic status, but The only thing that wasn't really mentioned was race and ethnicity, which I thought was interesting because Jason is a a person of color, and he enters into an interracial marriage with a white woman. And there was no discussion about differing cultures and how his family felt about him marrying someone outside of their culture and his wife's family um, marrying, well, her marrying someone outside of their culture. And I just thought that, like, that's really cool that there was honestly no discussion or nothing raised about that. I think it shows inclusivity, but at the same time, we do not want to fall into that trap of just because culture is not mentioned doesn't mean that like all is well, right? Because then we're falling into the trap of the all lives matter, quote unquote, versus Black Lives Matter, right? And how all lives matter, as we know, it glazes over the fact that there are true concerns with people of color and African Americans being brutalized by police. And it's often because of both race and class intertwined in that we do not invest in African American communities to give them the financial and other resources they need to thrive, like people have in suburban neighborhoods. And also, there is a lot of prejudice around Black culture and identity um, because white supremacy says that whiteness is more elegant and more desirable when that could not be further from the truth. And so I think in regards to him, he's not black, but he is a person of color. My guess would be that he's Indian. And so, but um, yeah, surprisingly that wasn't mentioned at all. And I think that while it might have been good to mention that, um, I think maybe what it shows is that, diversity and inclusion, it doesn't just apply to disability. It's also applying to our multiracial context in America. And historically speaking, we have not until recently reached this point of where differences in racial identity are considered okay and valid. And so I think that that's pretty cool that his mom was okay with him marrying Alice, and that was that. And Alice was okay with marrying him. That's okay. So I really think that yeah, that this film it did not always directly address these identities. Like there wasn't a lot said specifically about class or socioeconomic status. Like there wasn't a lot of information about these things, but I think with filmmaking, we can glean information from the storytelling, and each person watching the film can provide their own perspective. And I think that's what makes it very unique and special in that our understanding of and an expression of disability um, can be enhanced by each of us in community, whether we're people with disabilities or allies. We can really change the world through film, and that's what Jason De Silva does. So thank you all